Captain Emily Roberts stood at the bridge of the UES Prometheus, her eyes fixed on the holographic display, showing yet another distress signal. This was the third one this week. Her hands gripped the railing tighter as she watched the red dot blinking from the Henderson colony. "Captain, the message is coming through now." First Officer David Miller called out from his station. His voice was steady, but his face showed concern. The message crackled through the ship's speakers. "This is Henderson Colony. We are under attack. Unknown alien vessels have entered our space. Our defenses are failing. Please, anyone who can hear this." The transmission cut off abruptly. Emily's jaw clenched. "How far are we from Henderson Colony?" 4 hours at maximum speed, Captain," responded the ship's AI. Adam, its voice calm and measured. "Plot the course. All hands to battle stations." Emily pressed the ship-wide comm button. "This is the captain speaking. We have received a distress call from Henderson Colony. All personnel to battle stations. This is not a drill." The Prometheus hummed as its engines powered up to full capacity. The ship was humanity's newest battleship, fresh out of Earth's shipyards. Its experimental weapons systems had never been tested in actual combat, but today that would change. Kate Wilson, the ship's weapons specialist, rushed onto the bridge. Her red hair was tied back hastily, and she carried a tablet displaying weapon diagnostics. "Captain, all weapons systems are online. The new particle cannon is charged and ready." "Good," Emily nodded. "We might need everything we've got." As the Prometheus raced through space, more information began flowing in. The attackers had been identified as the Zarkax Empire, a species known throughout the galaxy for their advanced technology and their impenetrable planetary defense system. No one had ever breached their defenses in 3 centuries of recorded history. "Captain," David called out again. "We're receiving a transmission from Fleet Command." The holographic display changed to show Admiral Chen's face. "Captain Roberts, be advised. The Zarkax have attacked 3 other colonies in the past week. They've ignored all attempts at diplomatic contact. Their only message was that they consider humans unworthy primitives who need to be removed from their space." Emily's expression hardened. "With all due respect, Admiral, Henderson Colony isn't in their space. It's well within human territory." "Correct, Captain. Your orders are to protect Henderson Colony at all costs. The Prometheus is the only ship within range. Show them what humanity's newest battleship can do." "Understood, Admiral." Roberts out. The bridge fell silent except for the steady hum of equipment. Emily turned to Kate. "What do we know about their weapons?" Kate pulled up another display. "They use some kind of energy weapon we've never seen before. Reports say it can cut through standard shields like their paper, but," she smiled slightly, "our new adaptive shielding might have a chance." 3 hours to Henderson Colony, Adam announced. Emily walked to the front of the bridge, looking out at the stars streaking by. "Steve, how are the engines holding up?" Chief Engineer Steve Cooper's voice came through the comm. "Pushing them to 110%, Captain. She's handling it beautifully." The next 3 hours were tense. The crew ran battle drills and weapon checks. They knew they were heading into a fight against an enemy that had never lost a battle. When they dropped out of faster-than-light travel, the scene before them made everyone on the bridge catch their breath. 3 massive Zarkax ships, each one at least twice the size of the Prometheus, were firing on the colony's defensive shields. The colony's shield was flickering, close to failure. "Life signs in the colony?" Emily asked quickly. "Reading 5,000 colonists," Adam reported. "Shield integrity at 15% and falling." Emily straightened in her chair. "Open a channel to the Zarkax ships." After a moment of static, a harsh voice responded in accented English. "Primitive vessel, leave this space immediately or be destroyed. This is Captain Emily Roberts of the UES Prometheus. You are attacking a human colony in human space. Cease your attack immediately." The response was a harsh laugh. Your species is young and weak. You have no right to this space. Leave now, or we will demonstrate why the Zarkax Empire has never lost a battle." Emily cut the transmission. "Kate, target their lead ship's weapons array. Let's show them what primitives can do." She pressed the ship-wide comm again. "All hands, prepare for combat. Let's make history." The Prometheus's weapons powered up as it moved to face the three massive alien ships. The battle that would change the galaxy was about to begin. The battle at Henderson Colony had ended in a stalemate. While the Prometheus had managed to drive away the Zarkax ships, the enemy's retreat felt more like a mocking gesture than a real victory. Captain Emily Roberts knew they had only succeeded in delaying the inevitable. Now, 3 days later, she stood in the Prometheus's main briefing room with her senior staff. Intelligence Officer Brian Parker was presenting information about their new enemy, specifically about their famous planetary defense system, the Eternal Shield. The Eternal Shield has protected the Zarkax homeworld for over 300 years, Brian explained, pointing to the holographic display. No weapon has ever penetrated it, not even once. Kate Wilson, still nursing a bruised arm from the recent battle, leaned forward. "How does it work?" Brian brought up a new image. "It's a layered energy field that surrounds their entire planet. The outer layer reflects energy weapons. The middle layer stops physical projectiles. The inner layer," he shook his head in amazement. "The inner layer actually sends incoming attacks into a pocket dimension." "That's impossible," Steve Cooper, the chief engineer, said from his seat. "The energy requirements alone would be massive," Brian finished. "But they figured it out. They power it using 3 artificial suns they built around their planet." Emily watched the hologram rotate, showing the shield's complex structure. "There has to be a weakness. Nothing is perfect." "The Zarkax think it is," Brian replied. "That's why they're so confident. In 3 centuries, 17 different alien species have tried to break through it. All failed." David Miller, who had been quietly taking notes, spoke up. "What happened to those species?" "They were all conquered," Brian said quietly. "The Zarkax let them exhaust themselves trying to break the shield, then launched counterattacks when they were weak." The room fell silent. Everyone knew what that meant for humanity. "Show me the oldest records you have about the shield," Emily ordered. Brian pulled up ancient text translations. "Most of what we know comes from traded information and observed battles. But I found something interesting in some really old data we got from the Centauri traders." He zoomed in on one section of text. 300 years ago, right when the shield was first built, there was a small research team that theorized a potential flaw. They disappeared before they could test their theory. Steve got up and walked to the hologram, studying it carefully. "The shield works by creating a perfect defense against known forms of attack. But what if?" He trailed off, his eyes widening. "What is it?" Emily asked. "What if we attacked it with something it doesn't recognize as an attack?" Steve turned to Kate. "Our new particle cannon. It doesn't work like traditional weapons. It creates a temporary quantum disruption field." Kate caught on immediately. The shield would try to either reflect it, stop it, or redirect it. But a quantum disruption isn't exactly an attack. It's more like a temporary change in the laws of physics in a small area. "Could we modify the cannon to create a bigger disruption?" Emily asked. Kate and Steve looked at each other. "Maybe," Kate said, "but we'd need more power than we've got." "What if we use their own power against them?" David suggested. "Those artificial suns must put out an enormous amount of energy. If we could somehow harvest that." The ship's AI, Adam, spoke up. "Based on available data, a modified version of our solar collectors might be able to absorb enough energy for a 15-second burst." Emily stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. "How long would these modifications take?" 3 days for the cannon modifications, Kate said. "Maybe 5 for the solar collectors." "You have 4 days," Emily replied. Because that's how long it will take us to reach the nearest human colony the Zarkax are likely to attack next. She turned back to her crew. The Zarkax think their shield makes them invincible. That's made them arrogant. Throughout history, humanity has survived because we never stop looking for new solutions, new ways to do the impossible. She looked each of them in the eye. We're going to find a way through that shield, not just to save our colonies, but to show the galaxy that humanity won't be pushed around. No defense is perfect. It's time someone proved that to the Zarkax. The meeting ended with a new sense of purpose. As the crew filed out to begin their work, Brian held back. "Captain," he said quietly, "I'll keep digging through the old records. There might be more clues about that research team's theory." Emily nodded. "Good, because if we're going to beat the unbeatable shield, we need every advantage we can get." The Prometheus continued through space, its crew working around the clock. They had 4 days to solve a problem that had stumped advanced civilizations for centuries. But they had something those other species didn't. They were human, and humans had a long history of doing the impossible. The engine room of the Prometheus buzzed with activity. Steve Cooper hadn't slept in 36 hours, but he couldn't stop now. He was surrounded by tools, computer screens, and empty coffee cups as he worked on the ship's particle cannon. "Try it now," he called out to Kate Wilson, who stood at the weapon control panel. Kate pressed several buttons. The cannon hummed to life, then made a sound like a dying engine and shut down. "Still not enough power," she said, wiping sweat from her forehead. "Damn it." Steve kicked an empty toolbox. They had been at this for 2 days straight. The ship's AI, Adam, spoke through the room's speakers. "Chief Cooper, your stress levels are elevated. May I suggest a break?" "No breaks," Steve muttered. "We've only got 2 days left." The door slid open, and Captain Emily Roberts walked in. She looked at the mess of equipment and her 2 exhausted crew members. "Report." Kate showed her the latest test results. "We can modify the particle cannon to create the quantum disruption field, but we need more power. A lot more." "How much more?" Steve pointed to a diagram on his screen. 3 times what our engines can produce. Even if we shut down everything except life support, we still wouldn't have enough." Emily frowned. "And the solar collectors?" "That's actually going better," Kate said, leading them to another workstation. "We've modified them to handle the extreme energy from the Zarkax artificial suns, but we can only store that much power for about 10 seconds before the systems overload." 10 seconds to break an unbreakable shield," Emily said quietly. "It'll have to be enough." The ship's comm system crackled. "Captain to the bridge, urgent message incoming." Emily rushed to the bridge, where David Miller was waiting at his station. "It's from your sister's colony," he said grimly. Emily's face went pale. Her sister lived on New Haven, one of the outer colonies. She pressed the button to play the message. "Emily, it's Rachel." Her sister's voice was frightened, but trying to stay calm. "We've spotted Zarkax ships at the edge of our system. The colony's running evacuation drills, but we both know there's nowhere to go. Whatever you're doing out there, please hurry. I love you, sis." The message ended. Emily gripped the back of her chair until her knuckles turned white. "How long to reach New Haven?" she asked. 36 hours at maximum speed," Adam replied. "That's not enough time," David said quietly. "We need at least 2 more days to finish the weapon modifications." Emily stood silent for a moment, then hit the ship-wide comm. "Kate, Steve, get up here. And bring your work tablets." 5 minutes later, they were all gathered on the bridge. Emily pointed to the main view screen, which showed their current project plans. "We don't have time to make this perfect," she said. "What corners can we cut? What rules can we break? I need solutions, and I need them fast." Kate stared at the screen, then snapped her fingers. "What if we don't try to store the solar energy? What if we channel it directly into the cannon?" "That would blow out half the power systems," Steve protested. "Not if we bypass the safety regulators," Kate countered. It would be dangerous. But, do it, Emily ordered. What else? Steve studied the cannon modifications. We could simplify the quantum field. Instead of trying to disrupt the whole shield, we could focus on creating a small hole, just big enough for a regular torpedo to get through. One hole is all we need, Emily agreed. Adam, run simulations on these new ideas. The AI was quiet for a moment. Success probability is low. Multiple system failures likely. But it is possible. Emily looked at each of her crew members. I know I'm asking you to take big risks. This could destroy the ship. But my sister's colony isn't the only one in danger. If we don't stop the Zarkax now, they'll keep coming. David stepped forward. We're with you, Captain. We all knew the risks when we signed up. For the next hour, they refined their new plans. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't safe, but it might work. As the crew returned to their stations to begin the modifications, Emily stayed on the bridge, watching the stars streak by. Adam, she said quietly, send a message to New Haven Colony. Tell them help is coming. The Prometheus raced through space, pushing its engines beyond their limits. In the engine room and weapon bays, the crew worked frantically to rebuild their weapons. They had no time for doubts, no room for errors. Millions of lives depended on them finding a way to do the impossible. And somewhere out there, the Zarkax waited, confident in their perfect defense, never suspecting that humanity's desperate gamble might change everything. Zarkax ships detected. David Miller's voice cut through the tense silence on the Prometheus's bridge. 3 patrol vessels, heading straight for us. Captain Emily Roberts straightened in her chair. They were still 6 hours from New Haven Colony, and now this. Battle stations. Kate, is the modified cannon ready? Ready enough for a test run, Captain, Kate replied from the weapons station. Her fingers flew over the controls. But we've only got enough power for 2 shots before we need to recharge. That'll have to do. Steve, how are the engines? Running hot, Captain. Steve's voice crackled through the comm. But she'll hold together. Probably. The 3 Zarkax patrol ships were smaller than the ones they'd faced at Henderson Colony, but still dangerous. They moved with perfect coordination, spreading out to surround the Prometheus. They're hailing us, David announced. On screen, Emily ordered. A Zarkax commander appeared on the main display. His gray-scaled skin and yellow eyes made him look like an angry lizard in a military uniform. Human vessel, you have entered restricted space. Surrender now or be destroyed. Emily's response was simple. Fire. Kate triggered the modified particle cannon. The blue-white beam shot out, different from its usual red color. It struck the lead Zarkax ship's shields and went straight through them. Direct hit, Kate shouted. Their shield generators are damaged. The Zarkax commander's smug expression changed to shock. How did you? His transmission cut off as his ship's systems failed. But the other 2 ships were already returning fire. The Prometheus shook as energy blasts hammered its shields. Shields at 60%, David reported. Adam, show me a weakness in their formation, Emily commanded. The ship's AI highlighted a gap between the 2 remaining enemy ships, suggesting tactical maneuver, Captain. Their turn radius is wider than ours. Emily grinned. Steve, full power to the maneuvering thrusters. Kate, prepare for a close-range shot. The Prometheus dove between the 2 Zarkax ships, rolling to avoid their fire. The human ship was smaller and more agile, and Emily used that to their advantage. Second shot ready, Kate called out. Wait for it. Emily watched the tactical display as one of the enemy ships tried to turn and follow them. Now, the particle cannon fired again. This time, the beam caught the Zarkax ship from behind, where its shields were weakest. The ship's engines died, leaving it drifting in space. The last Zarkax ship broke off its attack and retreated at high speed. Should we pursue? David asked. Emily shook her head. Let them go. They'll warn others. And that's exactly what we want. She hit the ship-wide comm. Damage report, all stations. Steve's voice came first. Engine room's a mess, but nothing we can't fix. The cannon modifications held better than expected. Medical reports minor injuries only. Another voice added. Emily turned to Kate. Analysis of the weapon's performance. Kate was already studying the data. The quantum disruption field worked exactly like we hoped. Their shields couldn't stop it because they didn't recognize it as a weapon. She looked up with a grin. We just proved the eternal shield can be beaten. Captain. Adam interrupted. I'm detecting a life pod from the second ship we disabled. One survivor. Bring them aboard, Emily ordered. Full security protocols. Maybe they can tell us more about the defenses at their homeworld. Hours later, Emily sat in the interrogation room with their prisoner, a junior Zarkax officer named Kex. The alien was younger than their commander and much more nervous. Your weapon, it's impossible, Kex said, his scales twitching. Nothing can penetrate our shields. We just did, Emily replied calmly. And we can do the same to the eternal shield. Kex's yellow eyes widened. You plan to attack Zarkax Prime. That would be suicide. The eternal shield is 1,000 times stronger than our ship shields. Then help us. Emily leaned forward. Your people are attacking innocent colonies. Help us end this war before more people die on both sides. The young officer was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. The shield's control center. It's in the northern continent. If you could somehow get through, that's where you'd need to strike. Emily stood up. Thank you. She left the room and found David waiting outside. Did you believe him? David asked. Yes. He's too scared to lie. Emily checked the time. How long until we reach New Haven? 3 hours. The Zarkax fleet will beat us there by 2 hours. Emily's jaw tightened. Then we'd better hope our new weapon works as well on their capital ships as it did on their patrol vessels. Signal the colony. Tell them to hold on. We're coming. The Prometheus surged forward through space, its crew working to repair the battle damage. They had proven their weapon could work. Now they just had to save a colony, and somehow survive long enough to take the fight to the Zarkax homeworld itself. The battle for New Haven colony had been brutal but successful. The Prometheus had arrived just in time to save Emily's sister and the other colonists. Now, 2 weeks later, the ship was on a much more dangerous mission, a direct course to the Zarkax homeworld. Status report. Emily called out from her captain's chair. The bridge crew looked tired but determined. We're running dark, David replied from his station. All non-essential systems powered down. So far, we've avoided their patrol routes. Kate looked up from the weapons console. The particle cannon is fully modified now. Steve and I made it 3 times more powerful than when we tested it. The captured Zarkax officer, Kex, stood nervously at the back of the bridge. After helping them save New Haven, he had chosen to help humanity stop his people's aggression. 2 more days until we reach Zarkax Prime, he said quietly. But the hard part will be getting past the hunter-killer squadrons. As if on cue, Adam's voice came through the speakers. Alert. 3 Zarkax warships detected on an intercept course. How did they find us? Emily demanded. They didn't, Kex explained. These are routine patrols. My people are very organized. Emily studied the tactical display. Options. We could go around, David suggested. Add another day to our journey. Or we could fight, Kate added. The cannon worked well last time. Emily shook her head. We need to save power for the eternal shield. Adam, show me the nearby star systems. The AI displayed a map. Emily pointed to a dense asteroid field. There. We can hide in there until they pass. Captain. Adam warned, navigating that field will be extremely dangerous. More dangerous than 3 warships. Emily asked with a slight smile. Steve, how are the maneuvering thrusters? Ready for some fancy flying, Captain. Steve replied from engineering. Just try not to scrape off too much paint. The Prometheus turned and glided toward the asteroid field. The massive rocks floated in space like a minefield, some as big as the ship itself. Zarkak's ships are following us in, David reported. They think they've got us trapped. Emily's smile grew bigger. Adam, remember those simulations we ran last week? The ones about tight space maneuvering. Of course, Captain. Would you like me to execute maneuver pattern Delta? Show them what this ship can do. The Prometheus dove into the asteroid field. While the larger Zarkak ships had to slow down and carefully navigate, the human vessel danced between the rocks. Left, right, up, down. Each move was precise and calculated. They're falling behind, David reported with excitement. They can't keep up. But then the ship shuddered violently. We've got damage to the rear hull, Steve called out. An asteroid clipped us. Keep going, Emily ordered. We're almost through. The next 10 minutes felt like hours. Every near miss with an asteroid made the crew hold their breath. Finally, they burst out the other side of the field. Zarkak's ships are turning around, David announced. They're giving up the chase. The crew cheered, but Emily raised her hand for quiet. Damage report. Hull breach on deck 4. But the automatic seals held, Steve reported. We lost some sensor arrays and one of our backup power cells. Can we still make it to Zarkak's Prime? Yes, but we'll need to make repairs first. I recommend we set down on that small moon ahead of us. It's got a thin atmosphere, enough to work in with suits. Emily turned to Kex. Will we be safe there? The Zarkak's officer nodded. That moon is considered worthless. No patrols go near it. Then that's where we'll make our repairs. Kate, help Steve with whatever he needs. David, keep our sensors at maximum range. I don't want any more surprises. As the crew went to work, Emily studied the latest images of their target. Zarkak's Prime hung in space like a jewel, surrounded by its 3 artificial suns and the shimmer of the eternal shield. Beautiful, isn't it? Kex said, looking at his homeworld. I never thought I'd be helping aliens to attack it. We're not attacking your world, Emily corrected him. We're stopping a war. Once the shield falls, your leaders will have to talk to us. The Zarkaks nodded slowly. If anyone can break the eternal shield, I believe it's you humans. You do the impossible things that none of the other species would even try. The Prometheus touched down on the dark moon, its crew rushing to make repairs. In 2 days, they would attempt something no one had ever done. Break through the greatest defensive system ever built. And somewhere in the back of their minds, they all knew that this might be their last mission. But they were human. Doing the impossible was what humans did best. The Prometheus dropped out of faster-than-light speed at the edge of the Zarkak's home system. Captain Emily Roberts felt her breath catch at the sight before them. 3 artificial suns burned in a perfect triangle around Zarkak's Prime, and surrounding it all was the legendary Eternal Shield, a shimmering wall of energy that looked like a soap bubble around the entire planet. It's even more beautiful than I remembered, Kex whispered from his position at the back of the bridge. And more powerful, Kate added from the weapons station. These readings are off the charts. The shield is 100 times stronger than anything we've faced before. Emergency alarms suddenly blared throughout the ship. Multiple ships detected. David shouted. They're launching everything they have. Emily leaned forward in her chair. How many? 20 warships, more launching every minute. They're not taking any chances, Emily said grimly. Kate, prepare the particle cannon. Steve, get ready to begin power collection from those artificial suns. The ship's AI, Adam, displayed a tactical overlay. Captain, I estimate we have 8 minutes before their fleet reaches us. Emily nodded. Then let's not waste time. Begin our approach. Kate, target the shield's northern section, near their control center. The Prometheus moved forward, its modified solar collectors extending like giant wings. The artificial sun's energy began flowing into the ship's systems, power levels rising. Steve reported from engineering. 40%, 50%. Warning, the collectors are getting hot. Keep going, Emily ordered. How long until we can fire? 3 minutes to full charge, Kate replied. But Captain, even with all this power, we might only get one shot. The first wave of Zarkak ships opened fire. Energy beams and torpedoes streaked toward the Prometheus. Evasive maneuvers, Emily commanded. David, keep us alive until we can fire. The ship danced through space, dodging what it could. But there were too many enemies. Hits started landing. Shields at 60%, David called out. Power collection at 70%, Steve added. The bridge shook as another blast struck them. Warning lights flashed across every console. They're trying to surround us, Adam warned. Emily hit the ship-wide comm. All hands, brace for impact. This is going to get rough. The Prometheus took more hits. Smoke began filling some corridors. In engineering, Steve and his team raced to keep the overloading systems from exploding. Shields at 30%. David's voice was tense. We can't take much more. Power collection at 90%. Steve called out, just a little longer. A massive blast rocked the ship. Emily was thrown from her chair as sparks flew from nearby consoles. Direct hit, David shouted. Shields failing. Power collection complete, Steve yelled through the comm. Fire now, or we'll lose it all. Emily pulled herself back to her chair. Kate, fire the cannon. Kate's fingers flew over her console. The particle cannon hummed to life, glowing with more power than it was ever designed to handle. The beam shot out, brilliant blue-white, straight toward the eternal shield. Everyone held their breath. The beam struck the shield and stopped. No effect, Kate reported, her voice filled with despair. The shield is too strong. Emily refused to give up. Steve, give it everything we have. Shut down life support if you have to. Captain. Adam interrupted. I'm detecting a fluctuation in the shield. The quantum disruption field is having an effect, but it's not strong enough to break through. Emily turned to Kex. You know their shield systems. What are we missing? The young Zarkax officer studied the readings. The shield, it's adapting to your attack. But maybe. His eyes widened. The artificial suns, they don't just power the shield, they're part of its control system. If you could disrupt all three at once. Kate, can you split the beam? Emily asked. Yes, but it would weaken the effect even more. No, Steve's voice came through. Not if we modify the beam to match the shield's frequency. We could create a feedback loop. Emily looked at the approaching Zarkax fleet. They had maybe 1 minute before they were overwhelmed. Do it, she ordered. Kex, we need the exact frequencies of those suns. The young officer moved to help Kate, quickly inputting numbers into her console. Ready, Kate announced. But Captain, this much power through a split beam. It could burn out every system we have. Maybe tear the ship apart. Emily looked at her crew. They all nodded back at her. They knew the stakes. Fire. The particle cannon fired again. This time, the beams split into 3, each one targeting a different artificial sun. The ship groaned and shuddered as power surged through its systems. And in space before them, the most famous defense in the galaxy was about to meet humanity's desperate gamble. The 3 beams struck the artificial suns simultaneously. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the impossible began. Each sun started to pulse with an odd rhythm, like heartbeats going wrong. The eternal shield flickered, its perfect shimmer disturbed for the first time in 3 centuries. It's working. Kate shouted over the sound of the Prometheus's straining engines. The feedback loop is destabilizing their whole system. The ship's structure groaned under the stress. Warnings blared from every station as systems began to fail one by one. Hull breach on Deck 3, David reported. Emergency force fields holding. Barely. Steve's voice crackled through the failing comm system. Engine rooms on fire. We can't maintain this power level much longer. Emily gripped her chair as the ship shuddered violently. How much longer until shield failure? 30 seconds, Adam calculated. But the ship will break apart in 45 seconds. Look, Kex pointed at the main screen. The artificial suns were now pulsing in sync, each flash making the eternal shield ripple like water. Suddenly, Kate's console exploded in a shower of sparks. She jumped back, her hands burned but still moving to the backup controls. Power systems failing. We're losing the beam. Reroute everything, Emily ordered. Life support, artificial gravity, everything. Keep that beam going. The lights on the bridge went dark. Emergency red lighting cast everything in a bloody glow. The air began to get thin as life support shut down. 20 seconds to shield failure, Adam announced. The approaching Zarkax fleet had stopped firing. They were watching in disbelief as their perfect defense system began to crack. 10 seconds. Emily could hear the ship breaking around them. Plates of hull armor were tearing away. The bridge viewport was starting to crack. 5 seconds. Come on, Emily whispered. Come on. The artificial suns flared blindingly bright. The eternal shield stretched like a bubble about to pop. And then, it shattered. The shield broke apart in a spectacular display of light and energy. Fragments of the once perfect defense dissolving into space. The artificial suns dimmed to normal, their power over the shield broken forever. The bridge crew sat in stunned silence for a moment. Then David started laughing. Kate joined in. Even Kex made a strange hissing sound that must have been Zarkax's laughter. We did it, Emily said quietly. Then louder. We did it. The celebration was cut short by Adam's urgent voice. Captain, incoming transmission. It's from the Zarkax High Command. On the main screen, an elderly Zarkax appeared. His scales were pale with age, his eyes wide with shock. Who are you? Emily stood, though the artificial gravity was failing. Captain Emily Roberts of the UES Prometheus. Your perfect defense is gone. Your colonies are under our guns. Now shall we discuss peace? The old Zarkax stared at her for a long moment. Then he did something no human had ever seen. He bowed his head. Never in 300 years. We thought ourselves invincible. We thought ourselves superior. We were wrong. The eternal shield taught your people the wrong lesson, Emily said. It made you think that perfect defense meant you could do anything you wanted. But humanity knows better. We know that nothing is perfect, nothing is eternal. And we know that the best defense isn't a shield. It's peace. The Zarkax leader nodded slowly. Perhaps it is time for our people to learn this lesson as well. Stand down all forces, he commanded someone off-screen. Send medical and repair ships to assist the human vessel, and prepare for peace talks. The screen went dark. The bridge was quiet except for the sound of failing systems. Steve, Emily called out. How bad is it? The ship's pretty much dead, Captain, he replied. But we're alive. Somehow, we're alive. Emily looked around at her crew, humans, and one Zarkax, all working together to achieve the impossible. Adam, send word to Earth. Tell them the war is over. Tell them humanity just did what 17 species couldn't do in 300 years. As Zarkax medical ships approached to help, Emily watched their homeworld through the cracked viewport. It looked different now, without its shield. More real, more equal. Captain, Kate said softly. How did you know we could do it? Emily smiled. Because we're human. And humans have been doing the impossible since we first looked up at the stars. The Prometheus floated in space, broken but victorious. The ship had lived up to its name, bringing the fire of knowledge to those who thought themselves gods, and in doing so, it had changed the galaxy forever. In the years to come, people would tell this story, how a single human ship had broken the unbreakable, defeated the undefeatable, how humanity had turned an enemy into a friend. but most importantly, how they had proven that nothing in the universe was truly perfect or eternal, except perhaps humanity's determination to reach for the stars.